All right, folks, welcome back to another interview session. I am here with my guy, Kolby Mack, somebody who I have been following on Twitter and Instagram for a few years now because he's got some of the best and freshest takes when it comes to movies, and he has saved me from watching some truly terrible ones. He's been able to say, I told you so when I watched some truly terrible ones. He's been able to lead me to some great ones. But not just that, he's got an awesome spirit, awesome social media accounts. Love to follow him. Kolby, thank you for joining me tonight.
Yo, 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 what up? It is your boy Kolby Mack rocking the mic with Dan. What's up, my guy?
Loving it, man. Your reviews, I don't know where you find the time, but I also don't know where you find just the exact words that go into describing these films. Tell me how you got your start.
Man, I've been talking movies for as long as I can remember. I want to say my earliest impression of like watching a movie and then having an opinion on it, like a solid one, was watching Moonwalker by Michael Jackson. I remember going crazy, like, yo, there's Michael Jackson, there's Joe Pesci, there's this like weird like space spider lady, and I remember just like not shutting up about it. And that's like truly when I fell in love with movies. So I've always talked about movies as a kid and just like, making little mental notes in my head. And then when I moved to New York, my mom, she said, all right, we either do karate, you can do like this performing arts school. I was like, I'll try the karate thing first. Didn't really work out. All right, I'll try that performing arts thing next. And that further got me in the love of like storytelling and being a character. So then it's something I found within myself that I've then tried to understand what I see on screen. Still always talk about movies, still be around it. Actively, I'm a filmmaker, producer, screenwriter, do all this stuff, right? But then it was like one day in 2018, I was like watching this movie, and I typically always, anytime I'm watching something, social media. So like, it doesn't happen if you don't post about it, right? So if I watch a movie, hey, I'm watching a movie with my wife or whatever, and I'll give like my little thoughts on it, but I never thought about doing it, professionally. And what is professionally, right? Until the first time, I kind of like came up with a little moniker like KolbyToldMe. I was like, yo, that's got a nice ring to it. And I just kind of put that on the end of it. And then that's when it became. So like the official start of me talking about movies professionally was like Thanksgiving of 2018, right? And I was like, yo, when they ask you where you heard it from, tell them KolbyToldMe, right? I was like, yo, it's taken off by itself. And then people started using it. And then there's just one thing where it's like now it's the burden that there's not really anything that I watch without the purpose of then talking about it. Mm-hmm. It's a really kind of tough line to straddle between like, am I doing this professionally, like, to be, an esteemed critic, or am I doing this for like pure enjoyment? But I think I straddle the line all right.
So now has your passion sort of become a chore in this?
You know what? Sometimes it can feel like a chore. And definitely this past year has felt the most chore-like. It's been, a unique time in my life. I have not released a new episode of my podcast since June of this past summer. Going through some things personally, and, never in my life have I ever felt like a sense of anxiety. And I had to give myself a little break, right? Got some things going on personally. There's a global pandemic, right?
Just that little thing.
It's that little thing, right? And I felt definitely a lot of pressure and a sense of like, yo, if you're going to do this, you need to be able to stay consistent and stay engaging with your audience. You're cultivating and creating a community that you have a responsibility to. And I was deeply afraid of it, Yeah. And when it felt like a chore, I had to step back to be able to know that it's something I can be able to do. The one thing that I have kept consistent with is that I still rock the mic. Like no matter what, I'm always going to be able to like get myself out there. I'm still, for better, for worse, still doing my thing on Twitter, engaging, on the socials, and then doing a ton of guest spots. And so it's great to be able to still have that creative outlet. But like getting my podcast back up and running is at the top of my priority, but I really want to make sure I do it when I do it right. So when I kick off that first episode, I don't want to be infrequent. I want to be consistent. I believe that that's a responsibility to any content creator in regards to having organic following and creating growth for their audience, is to make sure that you adhere to that. Honor that responsibility to your, to your audience, right? And I think I'm there. My therapist tells me that, so I'm gonna go with with what he says.
That's a start. And I can totally relate to it because there've been many times. This is my daughter here.
What's up?
That's Zoe. During this time, I've been wanting to launch like podcasts, YouTube channel, all that stuff, and a lot of times it just gets too serious for me where it gets all bogged down with it has to be this type or that type. And that's when I started this Sunday interview series where I try to be consistent and just bring on people to give exposure to it, to show some love to. And, I definitely can relate to what you're talking there because I got my podcast, which is a bit more serious now.
Yeah.
And other people are on that journey with me. So it's not just mine. So I'm responsible to them too. So it's cool on this YouTube stuff where it's just me and whoever. And I love having you here right now, hearing about this experience because I found you through, I think, Matt Neglia on Twitter, and he like retweeted you at one point. I'm like, now this is a take I can appreciate. And this was 3 years ago, maybe.
Yeah.
And that's it. Just from there, like whenever I'm about to see a movie, KolbyToldMe.
Yeah. And it's one of those things, to be honest with you, where especially I think like 2019 was like my prime year, right? It's like, dabbled a little bit in 2018, and like 2019, I said, I want to see everything. And like, I really made it a point where I wanted to be able to watch every major theatrical release that came out that year. And I did a damn good job. I didn't get to like my magic number of 150, but I got to 146. I saw 146 brand new movies that were released in the theater that year. I would be on average spending, 2 to 4 days at the movie theater every week. I loved it, right? It was great. I'm a diehard for the theatrical experience. So definitely being in the pandemic, it really soured on me because like I got so used to the habit of being like in my favorite chair, right? Like I'm in row D, seat 7, I'm watching it in Dolby, hashtag Kolby does Dolby, right? Like that's where I want to be. And it's hard to keep up with a lot of streaming titles. So, but then also like, you and I, we're both fathers, right? If you don't mind me asking, how old is Zoe?
She's 7.
She's 7. My daughter's 8.
She's 8. I want to make her laugh.
My daughter's 8. She's going to be 9 in the summertime, right?
Oh, yeah. She's going to be 9 August 1st.
Oh, great. My daughter's going to be 9 June 19th.
Nice.
There's a responsibility that we have as fathers, as husbands. And then we also got to balance it out with like our real work.
Yep.
Because this is a glorified hobby, right?
Yeah.
But I think what keeps me going is that even though there's not the promise of like, this thing's going to take off and make me tons of money, it could, right? It could. And, as long as I have that and it's still fun to me, I'm going to keep doing it. Because no matter what, what's not going to stop? I'm not going to stop watching movies. I'm damn sure not going to stop talking about them. So why not, rock the platform where people want to hear me talk about it?
Well, it's funny because I do a lot of, comic book based stuff. And so what happens now with the podcast or the YouTube channel, I keep getting messages and texts about like what's going on with this show. Because, the series are on TV now. Yeah. And so it's like, hey, what's up with this? What's up with that? And at some point I'm like, all right, listen, I do have an actual job, like I do my fun stuff at night, but I got a kid, I got to feed, I got a wife, I got to pay attention to every now and then, like actually go to the store and stuff like that, where they're, hang out. And, so there's a bit more to that than just messaging, but there's definitely a balance to that, man. I can totally respect that. And, these kids at this age are not easy, especially in a pandemic, trying to learn and grow and thrive. And
it's so unfair to them. And I really try to do my part with my daughter because she's been robbed. I can't imagine when I was 8 years old, not having, because like my friends at school and like, my intramural sports, all that stuff, like that's all I had. Right. Yeah. Because it wasn't like, we weren't so attached to technology back then because technology is a little bit limited, right? Like I had a Super Nintendo, but like I was really after like 30 minutes, like, all right, me and Mario, we're done right now. I'm going to go outside and play. But now it's kind of fried out. Like my daughter has not had physical contact with her friends in over a year. Yep. She hasn't touched one of her friends, like her best friend from school, in over a year. Yeah. It's crazy. And we have no idea like what that's going to do to them. So, I'm fortunate to be able to work from home 100% virtually, right? Have no impact on my, my finances at all. Shout out to my dope job for being able to do that. And I still have the liberty and freedom to still be able to watch movies and still talk about it. Really, my life hasn't been infringed upon much, but our kids, it has. So the balance of being a podcaster, a content creator, a film and TV critic, and all that stuff, it takes a special gift, Not everybody can be us, bro.
That's true. And not everybody has the, the opportunity or even the, I don't want to say know-how, but like, how do I get this started kind of thing? And it's been cool to watch, because some people and seeing me put stuff up, not that I have a huge following or anything, but some people seeing it like, hey, how'd you do that? And I let them know. And then all of a sudden it's this whole adventure for them of getting out of their shell and opening up to things and stuff like that. So It's really awesome to see. Yeah, with the kid stuff, it's I actually started on my channel. I do like some unboxings for my daughter. We get comic books, she unboxes them and stuff like that. People were
Oh,
sending her from across the
nice.
country like surprise boxes and stuff.
That's cool.
It's pretty cool. But yeah, because she hasn't had a lot of that interaction either. We've kept our bubble pretty small.
Yeah.
And so she hasn't had that either. I think she gets her most interaction watching other people play video games on YouTube than anything
Crazy
else.
thing, man. Like, I don't know what it is. These kids, they can do that for hours, watching other
Yeah.
people do stuff instead of them doing it themselves.
Yeah, I find myself, I'll say, let's go play basketball. And then 10 minutes later, it's just me playing basketball and her in the garage watching her Kindle. So, but, one thing I really appreciate about your reviews when you get down to them is you don't just do one genre. You don't just do the big ones that are out there. You're not one of those, like say a DC Marvel movies come out. You're not one of those like, oh, DC sucks, Marvel's great. Like none of that. You do a fair shake on everything, or a comedy, romance, whatever it might be. You don't have like listen, I like the genre. It's all over the place, and you're fair to all of them. You're open to all of them, and it's funny, when you catch some heat for a take on something like that. Just seeing your responses on that. How do you operate in such a manner? Like knowing that you're going to get some heat for it. How do you get primed for like, I got to defend my stance on this, or that kind of stuff?
I think ultimately I love being a champion for movies because I love storytelling. I never want to stifle somebody from being able to tell their story, right? I call myself the most subjectively objective film critic in the game because I understand, because I've been on both sides of the lens. Before I was a critic, I'm an actor. I still am an actor. I'm still working. It's been a long time since I had some work, but I'm still working. But the fact that I moved to Los Angeles when I was 19 years old, right out of high school, $1,000 in my hand, no promise of a job. I had to make it work. I'm going to have to go back home. So I know what the struggle is for people wanting to tell their stories, right? I want to be able to do it when I can be able to transform myself into a character, be able to take direction from my director based on, the screenplay that they get from the writer. Filmmaking is a very collaborative process. Nobody makes a movie to make it bad. Now, it doesn't mean that there's not bad movies that are made, but nobody makes a movie intentionally be bad, even though there's times where you're like, there's no way you made this and thought it was going to be good, right? But I think that those are more few and far between. So with that being said, when I watch a movie, I'm always going in. Every movie starts out at 10 out of 10 because why not, right? Ultimately, a movie has to do this, right? I got to believe in the world. I got to believe in these characters and their convictions, the conflict, their goals, and did they reach them? I go for the fun. I don't want to be one of these hoity-toity, snooty film critics where it's like, this movie must beyond impress me in order for me to, like, nah, that's not fun, right? Like, we're talking about movies, man, like fiction and things of that nature. So there's no genre that I don't want to touch. I'm into some, like, a little bit of everything. You're right. Like, my palette for consuming film is pretty wide, and I like that because I don't feel pigeonholed into something, right? And also I feel like I can be able to give a confident take on a little bit of everything because I choose to watch a little bit of everything. I love some of the folks like yourself and others that are inside of like the YouTube space where they know, like, they're almost experts in regards to stuff that's mined from comics and what makes it there. And I follow a lot of that stuff. I try to kind of like, mimic and get that same thing. I'm an above average, comic book movie. I'll tell you this, since 2000, there's not a superhero comic movie that I haven't seen. Right. And I try to do my best to watch every drama, every rom-com, every comedy, and I don't try to put them all in their own individual box. My rating system is my system. So no matter what anybody ever says about it, as long as I can be able to confidently speak and provide context to my scores, I let that be, right? So
you're really consistent too with it, though. It's
that's the thing. I truly believe I am. Like, that barometer I have for myself, I'm really, really proud of it. And it's sometimes for some folks, it can be hard when someone sees like a cartoon movie that I rate as a 9 out of 10, and then they're going to equate that to a drama. You're telling me that this drama is on the same rating as a cartoon? It's about what they're doing respectively in their own little worlds, not necessarily like have them there. I'm conscious of it sometimes, right? Like, yo, come on, Kolby, you rated that a 7 out of 10. You really about to say that this movie is also a 7 out of 10? Like, I think I gave Sonic the Hedgehog like a 6 or a 7 out of 10. And if I'm trying to compare that to like, I'm trying to think of what drama did I watch recently I gave a 7 out of 10 to. I'm like, come on. But, they all operate, differently and respectively in their own rights. And ultimately, I'm not trying to take this too serious. The one thing I do take serious is that, like, yo, my word is my word. You're never going to have me change my mind, but I'm always open to it.
That's always, on point there. You can always tell that, but it's always, you take a more respectful approach where you don't slam directors, you don't slam actors, you don't slam the process. You're more about what you saw as a whole rather than, knowing this director I knew was gonna be bad or this actor's that I already knew. Like you're so fair about that where, I read a lot of other reviews or see a lot of other ones where it's, they go through the actor's history of how bad these things were, the director, and you don't do any of that. You don't touch that.
Thing is, you can kind of tell critics project a lot of themselves onto the work, and that's fair. Each critic's allowed to do their thing. There's no manual on how to critic and how to not critique something, right? But also, this is a game, bro.
Mhm.
Because I've been in the industry for a very long time on the creative side. Now, in this instance, on the critique side, imagine me, talking about, Zack Snyder, right? And people kind of have already formed their own opinions on Zack Snyder.
Guilty.
So they take that bias, right? And it carries along with them. So when they're talking about a specific piece of artwork, right, they try to color a lot of their criticism based off of other things. So if you don't like something, you're going to be more endowed to be able to nitpick onto it, right?
Mhm.
However, fairly and unfairly. I really do try to keep things within a particular scope. And to be honest with you, I always want to operate with integrity and respect because I know that ultimately that is my social currency inside this game. I
Yep.
may not get paid, but you know what I do get paid with? Respect. In the past 3 years that I've been really intensely on social media, specifically Twitter, I've heard some horror stories of what people have to go through being online. No lie, bro. I've gotten 1% of what the horror stories that I've heard because I cultivate a community that's around me that people respect and admire my words. And rightfully so, the people that I engage with, I am very selective on who I engage with.
Mhm.
And we can be, you know what the greatest thing I love? We can go at it about a movie in difference of opinion. It'll never get personal. It'll never be disrespectful. And at the end of it, that was a good fight. And we walk away, we keep it going.
You bring that up, and there's one on, I don't know if it was Reply to You or one that you started. It was about musicals. And I remember I was in like the subthread going back and forth with this one dude, but because of the community you cultivated in that one area, it was all respectful. It was like, that like respectfully disagree as opposed to like middle finger, like, no, you don't know what you're talking about.
You don't know. And
Dialogue
that's the
on
thing.
that.
We're on social media, so some people can be, it's really easy to cross over. You don't know ish, you don't know that, blah, 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 blah. Where does that get us?
Yeah.
There's not a fruitful conversation be gained there, right? Ultimately, if we're talking about debate, it's my job to be able to tell you why I like something, defend it, all right, and then also go against what you're saying. But if we both choose to go about this respectfully, there's insight to be gained. I may not have changed your mind, but I may have made you open. So maybe something a little bit differently down the road. Like, you know what, Kolby said this. And honestly, I'll wear like these little badges that sometimes like, when I hear people say at the end of it, I got to be honest with you. I've never, you're one of the few people who I've taught, like, had like an argument about a movie and it's never gotten personal. And I wear it like a badge of honor. Like, yo, bro, that's always how I'm going to go about it. So when I defend Zack Snyder's Justice League, or if I defend Suicide Squad and stuff like that, I guess I got a little soft spot for these DC movies, right?
Somebody has to.
Somebody's got to, like, I'm glad that it's never veered nasty. I really try to avoid being hyperbolic. I mean, when you see those little, like those buzzwords, this is a masterpiece, bro. Not everything can be a masterpiece. All right. We got to start putting a limit on that. I'm gonna start checking folks like, yo, you've used this word too many times.
I couldn't agree more. I really encourage people to check out your reviews. And I have a couple friends who are trying to get into the critic world. And so I always say, look at his Twitter and notice the difference between other people that you follow. And I mean, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on here is I have a few channels that I interact with, and we're all about getting away from all the toxic communities that are out there in the pop culture world and just forming a solid community and directing people to people where they'll have a fun experience and a shared experience and, an inclusive experience. And so I've been talking to some of my film people. I'm in film Twitter, and I have nothing to do with films other than talking about crap on YouTube. So and I consider that a privilege. I have all these people interact with me. I'm like, I don't belong in your world.
It allows you though to kind of like, to move a little bit differently, because for folks who subscribe to #film Twitter, it can be a bit elitist, right? Yeah. It can make people feel excluded because they don't know enough, right? When I started using it and really kind of understanding what the #film Twitter world was, I chose, like, no matter what, any space that I operate in, I'm always going to be Kolby.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, either you rock with me or you don't. And like, it's fine if you don't. Right. Because ultimately your opinions that you form of me do not impact me in the sense that it's going to change what I think of myself or curtail how I think about things. It doesn't mean I made a misstep and I may have missaid some, misspoke. But the one thing I'm really gracious about is like, I got no problem saying, yo, I'm sorry, my bad. People hate, it's like, I don't want to say I'm sorry. I don't want to say my bad. I don't want to ever look like I'm wrong. Why not?
That's part of life. That's part of growing.
It is.
It's supposed to be wrong,
Be married. You're going to recognize that you're wrong a lot.
Yeah. I mean, I was wrong to do one thing involving you, and that was to get involved in your fantasy football league. My ass kicked on a global front at this point.
I mean, before I had films, I'm from New York, from Yonkers, New York, and I'm a diehard New York Giants football fan. Hashtag go blue. Hashtag please Danny Dimes be good. Right.
Danny Dimes.
It's been tough, man. But like, I think the way that I go about film criticism is the way that I am as a sports fan, right? So my takes, my ratings, the films I love, I defend them in the same way I'm going to defend my New York Giants. We may have we may have some down years, but ultimately I'm always going to believe them. So who's your team? Who is like what's your NFL team?
So I'm a Packers fan. I have been since Reggie White was there back in the day.
Nobody can ever tell you nothing. And y'all have not won every Super Bowl that there is. You know what I'm saying? You've had some down years with some amazing talent. You could be frustrated because you're like, yo, you have one of the greatest QBs ever, and you decide to draft a quarterback in the first round. Matter of fact, you move up to get guy, right?
I have a Jordan Love jersey. I'm ready.
Oh! You see what I'm saying? It's like, so in the same, I kind of take that same approach when, when we're talking about a studio or a director or an actor. They don't got to sit here and bang out perfection every time. I haven't seen a QB except for a handful that have like thrown a perfect game. You know what I'm saying? A perfect QB record. It doesn't happen all the time. That's not the expectation. So I think that's really how I approach this game, is that I do it in the same way I approach my fandom. And thanks for being a part of the hashtag Film Twitter Fantasy Football League. It's been a lot of fun. It's a lot of work, man. I'm running 4 leagues, being the commissioner in, and I'm actively playing in. And I got to say, the 2 years that I've now done it back to back, I've definitely fared well. I have not won it, but you know what? You don't win every time, right? It's just about how you do.
I remember I got smoked by this woman in London, and I'm like,
Billy Melissa and her Ravens fanhood, man.
Yes. I'm sitting here. I'm like, I'm in so many leagues. I've won championships, and I just lost this person in London who doesn't even have an NFL team, and she just smoked me. And then she didn't just smoke me; she messaged me about it.
Nah, I mean, it's been great. And to be honest with you, and after playing fantasy football for years, you can get nasty in those messages, right? In regards to the smack talk. But I think the same way that I project that positivity in the film community, it's carried over because I've invited a lot of those folks to be able to have a space and kind of make that bridge. Because some people aren't movie and sports people. Some people are like, I'm a movie guy, I'm a sports guy. And I've also been inclusive, like folks that have never played before. Let me kind of teach you along the way. You may want to avoid this. And, I'd be saying like, I want to put an episode out, after every week. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
But also, even that, much like your Twitter feed, but even like on the fantasy football thing, and it's reflective of you. The chat, it's always like, hey, I need this position. Hey, I need this. It's not like the trash talking's fun, like there's that, but it never goes beyond a level of, we want to beat each other, but we're also going to help each other out and help each other beat other teams and stuff. I love it. It's the least toxic. Actually, it's completely non-toxic. Fantasy league I'm in. I'm in like 7 fantasy leagues. That's the one where I get a lot of joy because it's just fun checking the chat and everything.
Absolutely.
So, as somebody who has consumed so much film in your life, I have 2 questions, I think. One, and I know it's hard for some people, it's always been easy for me, but I haven't seen nearly the amount of films as you. What's your favorite movie? And 2, because I noticed that this was a big thing for me, did your movie taste change after you became a father?
Oh, those are both great questions. Favorite movie, all-time favorite movie is Coming to America. Classic, bro.
What'd you think of number 2?
Oh, unfortunately, I did not think much of it. It was tough, bro, because it's like I watch Coming to America, the original, a couple times a year, you know, and it's one of those movies that I first watched when I was 5 years old, right?
Yeah.
Several years after it came out. I had no business watching it, but I did. It was a different time back in the late 80s, early 90s. And Eddie Murphy was a superhero to me, right? I mean, in all of his films, I'm just like, I'm in awe of this man. I'm in awe of his mustache, bro. From The Golden Child, 48 Hours, Beverly Hills Cop, The Nutty Professor, Vampire in Brooklyn. Like, he's just like he's impressed upon me so much. So it was so easy to be able to see this man adore him for his comedy, love his raunchiness, and just the fact that he went there. And it's a very simple story, right? It's very simple. It's about a man who wants to find a woman. It's a fish out of water story, as well. And unfortunately, where this second film couldn't live up, granted, it's 25 years too late,
Right.
it's that it's a retread. It's trying to do the exact same thing and not explore the characters or go anywhere new. I had hope for it after that second trailer. My hopes were dashed. I think where I ultimately ended up landing on it, I was being very, very gracious, right? I gave it a 5 out of 10. And for me, right, 5 out of 10, this being in New York, a passing grade is a 55. Remember when I was in high school, it was a 65, but they dropped it down, so a 5 out of 10 on the KolbyToldMe scale is not a good movie, right? But not a bad movie. And if I really think about it, right, if I'm not looking at the whole, I'm looking at the parts, there's parts that are good in there. And I think that every film should be appreciated for the stuff that does work, right? It may not always come together, but I'm not going to let that total thing completely derail my experience that I had. It was great being able to reconnect with Lisa, being able to reconnect with Prince Akeem and Semi and like enjoying his kids, right? So it's unfortunate that it couldn't live up to my lofty expectations that I had, but ultimately it's fine. Like it's not the end of the world.
It's funny you mentioned that. That's in my top 5, honestly. I love that. I mean,
Hey.
Randy Watson is one of my favorite characters. But
I believe children of the future. I mean, it's so quotable, and ultimately, like, there's not much that can be quotable, from this new film. But, they tried something different, and they also tried to appeal to a different audience. And I noticed that in the way that they shifted how stories are told, especially for Black comedies. And, to your second question, how do I put this? My subjectivities to what I watch and how I watch has definitely changed based on my daughter. The great thing is that I've had the pleasure that, I've been involved in the film, in the film industry since I was a teenager, and I've networked and I know a lot of people. So I've gotten access to be able to get stuff a little bit early. And my daughter's had the privilege to be able to, watch things with me. There in the past 5 years, there's not a kid's film that's come out that she hasn't seen. She's seen it all. She reviews things now. Like now she gets excited because, like little girls look up to the dad. So she's got her own little thing. She wants to, Daddy. So this is how I would rate the movie. Our daughters are the same age. So they're learning now sentence structure. So like, to be able to, tell the story. They talk about the subject and they talk about, the conclusion. So she's using those buzzwords that she's learning in her 3rd grade classes. So I didn't like this because I don't feel like the subject was very clear. And I'm like, okay, all right. You know what I'm saying? And like, every now and then we'll do like a little video and it's like, her name is Mariah. So her thing is like, these are Rye's real reviews. And I'm like, this is so cute. So
that's awesome.
It's great. And I will say, I think in regards to kid-centered content, I'm a bit more gracious in regards to what the goal is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And understanding from a filmmaking standpoint, this particular production isn't trying to be the most refined in regards to its quality, right? You're not going to be able to get these dope cinematographers that are being nominated for Academy Awards, right? Because to be honest with you, I don't need to invest into that. I don't need to spend the extra money or time to get that when my audience doesn't care about it. Right. So I take that into consideration. Take Robert Rodriguez's We Are Heroes that came out this year, right? Streaming a couple of months ago. I get the entire point of the story. It's kind of senseless, but ultimately it's a group of kids that are being taught to work together because they believe that their parents are in peril, right? So I believe the world. Check. I believe these characters. They're a lot of fun. Check. Do I believe in the conflict? No, right? And I'm not giving it a perfect score. But ultimately, the audience that matters, my 8-year-old, she had a ball with that movie.
Yeah.
Why should I either, poop on it or try to disrespect it when ultimately its goal was achieved?
You recommended, was it Yes Day a couple weeks ago? So my family and I watched it.
Mm-hmm.
And not my normal movie to watch. Watched it with my family. My daughter loved it. She was up and down. She was laughing.
Did she ask for a Yes Day?
Yes, she did. She did, and she has reminded me numerous times.
Yes, I said after school's over, we'll try to put a date together.
Yes, that's where we're at too. But because she enjoyed it so much, I found that I enjoyed it much more than I normally would. I mean, Fortune Feinstein was in it, and we love her.
Yeah.
But I find that the cornier stuff I kind of laugh at more now and have fun with now as a dad. But her first movie that really clicked. I mean, there was Moana and all that stuff,
Yeah.
and Moana slaps to this day. But when we saw Into the Spider-Verse in the theater, that was the first movie that I saw really gravitate her like towards her, where she
Interesting.
just that became it. That's her second favorite movie. Like, I mean, that, and
That's
then we
awesome.
had to listen to the soundtrack right after. And it's as a comic book guy seeing that who loves Miles Morales, I'm like, oh, this is just a perfect combination. But that kind of changed the lens I watch movies through, because I'm sitting there analyzing it comic book wise and all that stuff.
Yeah.
It was an excellent movie. I think it's probably top 3 superhero movies of all time, to be honest.
I would absolutely agree. It's a 10 out of 10 for your boy. So
yeah, yeah. No, I'm hands down. And I just something clicked between the two of us where I just watch movies from a different lens now, where I watch it through her eyes. If it's more of a family oriented movie, where like, what is she taking away from it? Because if she's getting something from it, then the team did the right thing.
Yeah,
and you know what? I'm not getting.
That's a discernible difference. Watch a kid's film on your own. Watch it with your family. You're talking about 2 very different experiences, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's the power of watching with a group, right? And I think that's why I love the theatrical experience so much. Take comedies. Comedies is a very challenging genre to be able to get down, because it's very subjective, because comedy is purely subjective to every audience. Watching a comedy and I'm watching it by myself is a completely different experience if I'm watching it in a movie theater and I'm being impressed about the energy that's in the room. When you're inside this auditorium and there's this herd of laughter, it is so hard not to laugh along with it, right? It's just, that's just the power with it, right? And then like something's really, really funny if it's just you and like 3 other people inside the movie, and like you're laughing your butt off. I remember watching Dolomite Is My Name. I got a chance to watch it in a theater and I'm dying. I can't breathe. Yo, it feels like I'm the only person in the world that loves Dirty Grandpa with Robert De Niro. I almost pissed my pants. It was so good to me, and being a part of that room and electricity, that's the magic of what storytelling and filmmaking can do. And I'm going to always be a champion of it. Don't get me wrong. I love streaming. I love the accessibility it gives to filmmakers that don't have access to the big studios and distribution dollars. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, there's an inherent difference because of the format that does make it challenging, especially being genre specific.
Yeah. It's a lot of people have asked me, are you going to see Black Widow in the theater? And I'm sitting here, I'm like, man, to be honest, the last 3 movies I went to, there were crying babies, there were bodily functions coming out of people I didn't think I did movies, couldn't identify, it's, so to me, I'm like, I love it from my couch, but I know there's certain movies, like I'd finished this Godzilla Kong movie, and I'm like, I know if I saw that in the theater, it'd be a much different experience, because at home on my TV, I was like, but everybody I'm talking to who saw it in the theater, like, it was amazing. So now I know I have to go see that in the theater. But it's interesting to me, but I also want to help out like little theaters around me. We have one in Brockport, 20 minutes away from me, where they're about to shutter their doors because they haven't been open this whole time. So I know for a fact when they reopen, which they guarantee they are, I'm going to go. I'm going to buy tickets. I'm going to take my daughter and my daughter's friends. You're going to patron it, man.
That's what you're supposed to. And it's the same way in like the way that we build communities and social medias. Be the same way we should be supporting the communities that are literally a part of our everyday lives, right? Mm-hmm. These are our neighbors, right? Like you got to understand what villages were back in the day. That's how they worked, because we were actively benefiting from goods and services that people were providing for us that were living around us. Yep. So, I mean, I'm down here in Atlanta, Georgia, and it's pretty much been open since last spring, right? Like, there's about a good 6 weeks that we decided to stay inside. And once they said, hey, some restrictions are lifted, it's pretty much been open since. And I've been really careful, I go out when I need to go out. I don't really touch anybody. I know how to move. I got my mask. I got my gloves on. And I remember the first time I got a chance to be able to watch Tenet inside of a movie theater. Now, keep in mind, I go to the movie theaters a lot. And typically when I'd like to go, ain't nobody around anyway. So like there's always less than 10 people when I'm watching a movie, right? And so having Tenet all to myself was amazing. I couldn't imagine watching that film in any other theatrical, any other presentation outside of the theatrical presentation.
How much of a revelation is John David Washington, by the way?
Oh my God, bro,
I watched him on Ballers, but I mean, that didn't compare to.
I knew that he was in Ballers, right? And I know he's done a couple other things. And obviously, I think his big breakout was in BlacKkKlansman. And I wasn't necessarily in love with him in Black. I think he was good. I didn't think he was like Oscar nominee worthy good, but whatever. Yo, shout out to my brother. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But the moment I did not know that he could be an action star until he's inside of that scene where he's whooping everybody's ass, with plates and stuff. And he walks through like he does something with his shoulders. Like there's almost like he hits somebody and kind of walks through them like, yo, bro, don't mess with me. I was like, there we go. That's Black James Bond, right? And you know what else I love? He's short like me too. It gives an actor like me some promise. Like, you know what? I don't have to be 6 foot to be able to make it in this business. If I do it as 5'9", just like me, we're gonna make it happen.
Yes. He like on Ballers, he dealt with some pretty bad writing in certain scenes, but he carried those scenes. And so seeing him in this, because I'm not a Nolan guy by any means, and I know some people love him, and
he does it for me, man.
He hurts my head.
I can understand that completely. I like the fact that he thinks big.
Yeah,
and
he definitely does.
He believes in his vision, and I like him just to be able to go for it. So I mean, some of my favorite movies all time. Dark Knight, Inception, he's behind, he's in charge of that. And every time that I go to see a movie of his, it's always a really unique experience.
Yeah. Well, for me, what was interesting is I almost dread watching his movies, but I watch every single one still.
Yeah.
And even this one, and it's like change my mind, because I always like the concept of it. It's just I always get lost in it. Maybe I just don't have the headspace for it. But even this one, like, I wasn't a huge fan of the movie, but just watched it. I'm like, I got to see this guy and everything. Like, I'm hoping they bring him in. Like, whatever. Like, I hope MCU brings him in. Like all this stuff. Like, just I need to see this man and much more.
I'm loving the trajectory of his career. He's absolutely capped it off for me with his performance as Malcolm and Malcolm Marie. And I'm a big champion of that movie. It is a easy 10 out of 10 for me. I don't just dole out perfect film scores all the time. I am selective. I wait for something special to happen. There's like this electric moment. I never know what it's going to be. And there was a scene that involves a butcher knife between himself and Zendaya as Marie. And it completely floored me. I fell in love with the movie. I talked about it on almost 10 podcasts. I spent hours and hours of talking about it on podcast form, YouTube form, and clubhouse rooms over and over and over again, dissecting it. And that's the fun part that I love about doing what I do. I'll never get tired about talking about things that I love, rightfully so. It's crazy. I see folks get so mad about the things that they don't like. I'm like, how do you let something you don't like just sit here and take up so much of your energy in your life? I'll say I didn't like something. I'll keep it moving. That's it. Exactly. I don't got to sit, for all the folks that like hate like the Snyderverse and stuff like that, granted the folks that love it, I can understand why somebody will like restore the Snyderverse or like, release the Snyder Cut for the past 4 years. But for the folks that bash it, why is it bothering you? Like, why are you giving this so energy when you feel like you have to actively go against something? I don't know. I don't choose to lead my life like that with so much negativity. Well,
it's interesting because somebody in the nerd community who's got to take one side or the other and a lot of talks with that stuff. It's almost this like herd mentality of even if it's bad, we got to defend it kind of thing. And so because of that, it's a lot of people dismiss the other stuff that is good on the other side. Yeah. It's very politicized in a nerd political manner.
Yeah.
And that's the frustrating part where it's like, all right, cool. You can not like it, say you didn't like it, but still say you like that universe. Like that's cool too. Like, you have to put all your
it's not an all or nothing type thing for me.
But it's sad that that's where a lot of franchises have gone, especially like in the Marvel DCU stuff. But just in general, or if a movie tackles like say race or politics or whatever, it's all of a sudden, somebody who hasn't even seen it will be like, oh, I'm not gonna touch it like that. Like I remember people were mad that Black Panther is coming out, like not realizing, hey, it's a damn comic book character. Comic book, like that.
Well, because folks already, kind of formed their opinion and stuff like that. Like, why is it gonna be all Black Panther? Because that's what he's been called for decades. You know what I'm saying? It's like, my dad used to collect a lot of comic books, and there's some stuff that I read, like oh man, what's that? What's the Dragon Cop? What is that one?
Savage Dragon,
right?
Yeah.
Can't remember a lick of it, but all I know is like I remember those really, really cool things. I would love to see a Savage Dragon movie, right? But I'm aware of all these different titles and stuff like that. And I think it's a beautiful place that we're in the golden age of superhero cinema, where there's so many storylines that have just been around for decades that can be able to make their translations onto the screen. And I give everything a fair shake. I really, really do, And Black Panther was a cultural touchstone. I think deservedly so. I love the fact that it was embraced by the Academy and, nominated for Best Picture. Because I think ultimately, what a Best Picture is something that should be a cultural impact, should be a film that is, critically praised, as well as like does amazing numbers. I think it's great to have recognized a film like that. Did I expect it to win? I definitely didn't, but I love the fact that it was nominated. I would have loved if Endgame was nominated because it's definitely one of the greatest superhero movies ever as well. But I like the fact that I can be in a space. Is every Marvel movie perfect? No, and nor do I expect them to be. But I love their world. I believe in those characters. I think they're doing an amazing job. Kevin Feige, sometime soon, needs to get an honorary Oscar in regards to just doing something that was never thought that could have been done, and honestly will never be repeated.
Yeah. Ryan Coogler, he's just done so much, and so like when I saw he was doing Black Panther, I was like, yes, because
just look at his trajectory, man, going from Fruitvale Station to Creed, one of the greatest sports movies of all time. Then
and that him and Michael B connection, that's just, I want to see that for the rest of their careers. Him and Michael B. Jordan together on like all these projects. It's just,
yes, let's keep it going.
Excellent. I mean, I've liked that dude since Parenthood when he was on there. So so it's been great to see. But I just, I will say, because of this whole film Twitter thing, because of following you, I watch a lot of movies I wouldn't typically watch. I'm comic books, I'm comedies.
Appreciate that, man.
And I'm here and there on other ones. Like if it interests me, like culturally or like historically, something like that. Like if I see something about Malcolm X coming, I'm gonna watch it. Or like something along the lines of One Night in Miami, I'm definitely gonna watch that sort of stuff. But there's a bunch of stuff you watch that I would normally just dismiss and be like, it's not my wheelhouse. But I've watched and thoroughly enjoyed. Even things like a family film, So it's just so cool to see. And I just I'm on Twitter more than I should be, but that kind of comes with the whole working on the computer, working from home sort of thing. And it's refreshing. I have a lot of the political stuff in mind and all that crap, but come to your feeds and it's all love, whether it's agreeing or disagreeing, it's all love in your culture that you created there on this little bubble. And I love it. And that's, and thinking, I'm like, I gotta have this guy on, because there's just the movie world, it's become so divisive for so many people, regardless to like actors, nods, who gets paid attention to, studios, just everything. And it's, a lot of times if they hire actors who are blamed for something, or directors, things like that, all of a sudden the whole studio, the whole production, everything's blanketed into there. And yours is just like, here's this film. Let's talk about this film.
Yeah.
And I'm all about it. And I can't encourage people strongly enough to check out what you're cooking, because man, it's delicious. And it's refreshing. I'll say that, it's you create I don't want to say safe place, because there's nothing that feels unsafe about it at all. It's just an environment to talk and to get perspective. And I mean, you and I have disagreed at length about multiple movies, but it's all love in the end. And it's one of those, it's okay to not like something kind of thing.
Yeah. And that's the fun part about it, man, is that like, life is too short, and life is ultimately about the choices that we make. I choose every day to be myself, to be engaging, to be respectful. And it doesn't mean that it's always easy, right? Like I've had my fair share. Like I remember, I got random emails about like, I did a guest spot one that's, you don't know anything about movies, you're a crackhead and this and this and that. Like, I don't feed into trolls, and this is the thing. If you don't feed trolls don't exist, right? And I'm not going to give, somebody power over me like that.
Well, your gift game is also really strong too.
Yo, let me tell you something. I am really, really proud of my gift gang. Like it's definitely, it's a skill, right? For those that are ever want to know, follow your boy, right? At KolbyToldMe. I can be able to put you onto some stuff, to kind of get creative and stuff like that, right? But ultimately, it's fun, man. This is social media. This is a beautiful life that we live. And I choose to be a glass half full kind of guy. I try to accentuate the positive, and I want that to bleed over into everything that I do. For my show, anytime that I'm doing a guest spot, I want to be able to add my special type of flavor and leave an imprint anywhere I go. So that's your choice that I make on a daily basis.
I love that, man. I can't say enough about that. Now, I've greatly appreciated my time with you tonight.
Hey, man, it's been fun.
It's been a great talk, and I'm kind of envisioning some future talks on some superhero-based movies.
Oh, most definitely, bro. This would not be the first time. I mean, this is the first time. It damn sure won't be the last time. Got to collab on something. Yes. When I have you on my pod, I got to start back up my little review series too. Because I want to be able to just generally learn, as a storyteller myself, I learn based off of the things that I introduce to my life, different people, places, how they lead. And this all informs the characters and the worlds that I build for my screenplays. Right. And ultimately it helps me in regards to how I describe a film and things of that nature based off my own lived experiences. So talking to people, learning about people, that's a beautiful gift that we have in life. And we got to cherish that.
Yeah. And it's fleeting in a lot of ways. We gotta,
Yeah.
gotta take what we can, man. So if I were to ask you what's next for Kolby?
Yeah. So what's next for me? I said I was gonna have the return of my podcast on March 31st, but I knew deep down I wasn't gonna stay consistent. So this first season 3, episode 1 of the Kolby Told Me podcast, it's coming soon. I'll say that. Definitely sometime this month, but it'll be my celebration of 2020 with the Golden Kolbs, the best damn award show. You can watch the Oscars, but definitely come listen to the Golden Kolbs. Subscribe on all your major podcast platforms. The Kolby Told Me podcast, KolbyToldMe. That's me. Catch up on all of like the old stuff, which has been great. People have been listening. Got some good stuff on there. It's going to be really, really good where I can be able to get back into a groove, into a rhythm, doing my thing. You know what? One thing I learned, I think as I was like kind of like going to all these podcasts and seeing like, Google Docs being shared. I think for myself, I was almost putting pressure on myself and trying to be like overly scripted. Then I recognize, bro, that's not you. That's not me. Most of my podcasts, honestly, the first time I did my podcast, bro, I took a full written review, and as a performer, I treated it like a one-act play.
Yes.
And it was just me and my review, right? And I can find a very creative way to go in and out of the review, and it turns into like this performance piece, which is a great creative outlet for me. And then I can be able to have room to talk about something else. So I'm not going in. I'm doing my entire show solo dolo, unscripted, just whatever comes, and you take it like that. It's gonna be a nice little micro pod, no more than 10 to 20 minutes. I want to kind of have something that's in a unique space, because I listen to 10 plus podcasts, 10 plus hours of podcasts on a daily basis. All right. Right now I'm at 54 podcasts a week, because I try to make time for everything. Somebody invites me on, let me cover out YouTube is a beast, bro. That's a whole different area. But I'm listen to your podcast. Definitely, yeah. So for those out there, once again, want to listen to my podcast, the Kolby Told Me podcast, coming soon within Golden Kolbs, within a few weeks. So that way, when they ask you where you heard it from, you can tell them Kolby told me.
And I will be sharing that with the entire universe.
Yes.
Now, you've been gracious with your time. I do have a question. I like to know this. It's just, I'm a big music guy too. Favorite movie soundtrack?
Ooh, favorite movie soundtrack. I would think like really, really good on this one. Favorite movie soundtrack, New Jack City.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's something about the era of that time in the late 80s. Like, you can't go wrong with it. It's a great balance of, really hood, hard rap music, also some great R&B and pop hits, from that time. And I'm an 80s baby, but the 90s raised me, right? So I love having a good balance of all of that. So yeah, I'm gonna go with New Jack City as something I can just always be able to pop on.
That's tough. For me, I have two, and I can never decide between them. It's Boys in the Hood and Garden State, and they couldn't be any more different from each other. Yes,
man, my man Zach Braff. All right.
The man can put together a soundtrack.
Yes, he can.
Every single movie he has, the soundtracks are amazing. And it's funny because I have these debates with so many friends, favorite soundtrack, and it's like, those are the two it always comes down to me. Tevin Campbell on the Boys in the Hood soundtrack, you can't go wrong with that.
Not at all, man.
But those are my two. Now, every segment that I have for these interviews, I love to end it with shouting out a local business. They've taken a big hit, but I've seen many of them be pillars to their communities, even while shut down. Yeah. And I was wondering if there's any local businesses, whether it's in Atlanta there or back in Yonkers, that you want to show some love to.
I mean, I definitely, any chance I'm a foodie. So anytime I can be able to talk about food, especially on a local level, for a guy who, it's called the Blaxican. It's a fusion of Mexican and soul food. Ooh. We're talking about collard green quesadillas, Texas barbecue dry rub steak tacos. I mean, it is some of the best food I've ever had. It's a very unique flavor that's down here in Atlanta. It was actually, if you see streaming on Netflix right now, is Bad Trip. So Eric Andre and Lil Ro Howery. Yeah. And it's inside of the third act, that truck makes a little appearance. So anybody who comes down to Atlanta, check out the Blaxican. I feel bad for them because they opened up a brick and mortar at the end of 2018. Ooh. And so they really had a very short-lived run with their brick and mortar location. They've always been a really popular food truck, and they kind of had to go back to the food truck side. But, I'm glad that we have these different means to be able to keep some of these businesses in business. And I feel my heart really goes out to the number of industries that honestly are going to have to likely never open up their doors again.
Yeah.
And I really hope that the government can like look deep down in their hearts and pockets to be able to make it right. Cause none of us asked for this. Right. And if we have the means to be able to save a lot of these, these mom and pop shops, like I said, pillars of community. We need to be able to do that. I'm glad to also on my little side hustle, I work for Uber Eats. So I'm glad that there's like, little gig economy stuff like that to be done to keep some of these places, there's doors open. So, I mean, they can keep the kitchen on, but they got to keep people out the dining room. I'm glad to be able to help any way I can. So yeah, the Blaxican down here in Atlanta, Georgia, come check it out.
The menu's got me wanting to get in my car right now.
Yo.
My shout out today is Collectibles and More in Brockport. Great owner, talks about giving to my charity for the kids every time I step in. Just opened during this whole thing, selling Funkos, collectibles. All in all, just genuinely good guy. Another father, he does everything he does for his kid. Can't talk about him enough. I'm actually gonna have him on my YouTube channel in a while, talk about collecting all that stuff. But yes, please, everybody listening, and you heard this from Kolby too, support your local businesses. Yes. Go eat, get Uber Eats. It's cool. Yeah. And my man, this is not the last time we're doing this. I can assure you that. And I appreciate your time. Much love to you and the family. Thank you for stopping by.
Thank you for having me.
Man, and just everybody follow this, man. It's been a genuine good time for the last 3 years I've been doing so. So my friend, I appreciate it. Any last words?
Love one another. Love movies.
I love it. Much love, everyone.